I mentioned People versus OJ, but correct me if I'm wrong, This Is Us is actually your first regular series costume?
Yes, it's my first series. People versus OJ, I did just the first. The American Crime Story is a franchise that takes a different story every year. And after I finished that, I did the pilot for This Is Us, and I did the pilot for Riverdale. I think I may have done another one in there.
Young Sheldon.
No, that was
that.
Yeah. And then I had tough decisions to make because I had to decide where I was going to land and which show I was going to follow up with for series, because they all went to series, which doesn't always happen. So that was kind of a shocker.
And you chose the one with multiple timelines.
And I chose it's funny because my crew and I, we still joke about it, because when we shot the pilot for This Is Us, we called it the Untitled Dan Fogelman Project. And none of us knew what the name was going to be. Nobody knew what the name was going to be yet. And in the pilot, we just really show the two eras. We show what's 1979, 79/80, and then contemporary. And none of us knew what the storylines were going to be going forward in the series. And we didn't know we were going to always be in 4 decades, a minimum of 4 decades, at all times, every few days. But my crew joked with me, because of course, I have a crew that I work with for years and years, and we're really close. And so I asked them, I said, guys, what are your thoughts? Which of these shows do you feel like you guys want to work on? And everyone said, oh, let's do the Untitled Dan Fogelman Project. It's going to be so much easier than the other ones.
Oh my God! If they only.
So now we'll be in this really incredibly complicated, 2 units and 2 different decades. And sometimes they'll look at me and say, "Yeah, let's just do the really easy Dan Fogelman Project." But everybody really loves it, and we're all really close. And none of us, we all feel really good about the decision.
So what is the weekly process like? When do they ever tell you beforehand? Oh, by the way, we're doing these 2 years next week. Do you get a head start, or do you have to wait for the script?
It's both. We wait for the script, and sometimes there are completely shocking, surprising elements in it that we're not aware of. Because we're also pretty close now, Dan Fogelman and the writers and the showrunners will have just general meetings with me where they'll just go over some of the broad strokes for the future. Now that we're just starting season 3 now, prepping it, but that wasn't the case with the pilot, because I don't think we even really knew where we were going to go. But so I'll get a general sense of some story elements, but every week every time I get a new script, it's just full of things that we've never imagined.
So you immediately start research?
Immediately start research, and start making whatever it is that we have to make, and have new characters, and have different characters, have different ages of kids and babies and toddlers that are played by the adult cast of the 3.
3 sets of actors.
We have 3 sets of actors who play the 3 children of Rebecca and Jack. But then sometimes we'll go into a little bit more of a backstory, and we'll see them as newborns, and then we'll see them as 1-year-olds, and then we'll see them at their 2-year-old birthday. And usually that all happens in one episode, where we'll have 7 racks, and all the babies, of course, are played by twins, and their doll, there's also a prosthetic doll, because we can only have the children for a short period of time on set. And so there will be, 6 of each costume for each of 6 kids. And it's quite an undertaking.
What I love about it not being linear is that you can see everyone's style and how it's changed throughout the years, but still there's some recognizable trait of their fashion sense. Yeah. So is it hard or at all to keep that aesthetic for each of them through 4 decades?
You know what? I'm glad that you brought that up, because I feel like that's one of my most important jobs on the show, because we jump around so much, and because we have so many different actors playing the same person over time and jumping back and forth. Me and my team, we worked really hard to try to establish an aesthetic for each character, so that, for a number of reasons, because that's authentic, because that's kind of how we are. I don't think that my style has changed dramatically over
You change with the times.
I change with the times, and my collars might change, and my hemlines might change, and my, I might add some trendy elements, but in general, I feel that people tend to have a general aesthetic that they'll deviate and play with a little bit as as real people. So that was one of our goals, is we wanted to make sure that they were authentic, because the stories that we're telling are really important stories, and a lot of variety, and really appeal to so many different kinds of people. And so in a sense, the costumes sometimes need to take a back seat to just be sort of a foundation, so that the story and the acting and the drama of whatever we're exploring is really at the forefront, and the costume is just sort of an authentic and real, but just takes a bit of a back seat to the scene, the acting, and the storytelling. But back to so that's part of our goal, is to create an aesthetic for each character that makes that person authentic. But there's another part of that, and that is, as we jump around and add and go back and forth, I always need the viewer, the audience, to know where we are with the character. And if I was just pursuing fashion or fads, for instance, for Rebecca in the 80s, if she all of a sudden was wearing giant shoulder pads and huge, really super bright colors and had really big hair and makeup also we work all very closely together. How would the audience know that that's the same Rebecca that we've been seeing in the 70s, and the same Rebecca that we've seen even earlier in the courtship with Jack? And so, anyway, as much as we enjoy fashion elements, for our main characters, we're not always using the styles that are iconic styles.
They don't dress like that every day.
of the whatever era we're showing, because it could be distracting, and it also is not necessarily the aesthetic we've built for them. Now, that said, some of my characters, now Toby, Kate's super fashionable, we'll talk about her in a minute, but Toby, on the other hand, he likes to, even though some of his costume is just really plain and very serviceable and just basic stuff, he also has a super fashionable side. And so with him, we like to play a bit and wear colorful jackets and do lots of kind of unique combinations and have some fun with it. And the actor himself enjoys that in his life. And so it's kind of this nice symbiosis where I was going this direction with the character. We thought it would be fun for him. And Chris Sullivan, that's his name, he is doing the same thing in his life, and he really enjoys fashion and pushing it a little bit. So so it's not that we're taking a backseat with fashion in every scene or with every character. It's just occasionally we want to pull back a little bit, and other times we want to push things forward, like with the wedding episode, for instance.
I love the wedding because there's a lot of great outfits in there. Let's start with Kate's wedding dress. And how did that come about?
Well, the wedding episode actually has 2 weddings in it. And what we have is the wedding, the real wedding of Kate and Toby, and all the family members there. And then we have, Kate has a dream leading up to her wedding, where she dreams that her father is not deceased, and that her parents are having their 40th wedding anniversary renewal of their vows ceremony. So it is sort of like another wedding ceremony. With almost all of the family members are all there. And so that was a costume change for everybody, of course. It's 2 different weddings, and one of them is a fantasy. For Kate's wedding dress, we knew that was coming. That was something that Dan Fogelman and the writers had alerted me, so that I could get a jump start on that, because that's a really long process. The dress is entirely handmade. It's a completely couture dress. The process for starting that was I started with sketches, my own sketches, and exploring silhouettes and ideas for her. And I wanted to make sure, since we've made so many dresses for her, I wanted to make sure the wedding dress had its own silhouette and was a little bit different from the other dresses, the other necklines and the other hemline effects that we had used previously with her. And we also knew it was the final episode, so we really wanted to make sure that it was something really, really special. And then I hired a sketch artist, Jacqueline Wazier, who is a sketch artist that I work with all the time when I want hand-drawn sketches. For me, hand-drawn sketches are so evocative and have so much more emotion in them. So when I'm sketching a woman's dress, I like to use the old-fashioned hand-drawn sketches. And I don't even like them to be completely finished. I like them a little bit rough so that you get a sense of emotion in it. And then there are other projects, of course, where I'll use digital artists and all kinds of, a variety of artists for different work. But for this dress, I used my favorite hand sketching artist, and we sketched out about 10 different styles, talked to the directors and Dan Fogelman, everybody talked about our ideas, the showrunners. And then I made the dress in a less expensive fabric, because there's so much yardage involved in, of course, bridal fabrics are quite expensive. So we made up a dress in a mock-up fabric, loved it, made some adjustments, and then started the process of hand making it in the really expensive beaded French lace fabric, which is gorgeous. And our cutter fitter, Marcia Moore, worked on it for over. At the end, we had 3 stitchers working on it, but it took almost 3 weeks, about 2.5 weeks, to make that dress, because all the beading requires hand sewing, and we actually encrusted the bodice with more beading, so we would all of that had to be hand placed, and it was just really an incredible process. I've never made a dress that is that
Where's
complicated.
Where's the dress now?
Oh, it's at the studio.
And the mock-up, both of them?
It's in our very safe storage room. I'm not going to tell you where it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Rebecca's fantasy vow renewal dress.
Oh, so yes. So Rebecca, Rebecca, who plays Kate's mother, in season 1, we shot Jack and Rebecca's pieces of their actual wedding. And in that she wore a guipure all lace, beautiful 70s dress that we took completely apart, a true vintage dress. We took it completely apart, sized it to fit Mandy's figure, made it a little bit smaller, and had to hand fix because it was a genuine dress from the 70s that we were shooting, last year. It needed a lot of work, and so my team quickly not only rebuilt the dress entirely, but had to repair it in so many places, and you can't see it. And then we built a slip that went underneath it. But the reason that this dress of hers is important is because when we found out that Kate was going to be having a dream of her parents having a renewal of their vows, I wanted to get inside of her head and think, how would Kate see her parents if her father was still alive, if they were having a renewal of vows? And of course, certainly, she's seen her mother's wedding dress. I've seen my mother's wedding dress. I'm sure everyone is, so she probably had that somewhere in her subconscious of her mother's style and that. And so what I wanted for Rebecca in the dream sequence as a 66-year-old Rebecca, I wanted it to connect to her actual wedding dress, but still be the contemporary, stylish version of it. So we ended up doing what a lot of us do, which is taking an existing garment, taking an existing dress, and buying a couple of them and entirely rebuilding it to suit our needs for that scene. So for instance, if you take a strapless dress and then you buy a second dress or 2, then you can make a beautiful, what we did is we cut beautiful sort of a butterfly sleeve to go with this dress, which was more suitable for her age and all of that. But anyway, but the fabrics connect. The fabric that she wears, that Rebecca wears in the Renewal of the Vows, is very, very similar to the fabric that she wears in her actual wedding, and that was important.
It seemed like it was like if that had been real, she just updated her old wedding dress, which is what people do when they renew their vows, because there's a very similar look to them.
There is a very similar look to them. Again, it's not real; it's a fantasy. I think that it's more modest. It's more suitable for a 66-year-old person versus the 26-year-old person. But I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed the weddings, the 2 weddings, and one of my favorite things to do is to design and build dresses and gowns, and so I had a chance to really go there in this last season, and that was really very rewarding for me.
Annie's
it's my favorite.
Flower Girl dresses.
Yes,
were also
we made
great.
those 2 Flower Girl dresses. Of course, in addition to having the overall aesthetic and control of the colors and the silhouettes and everything, and I just couldn't find anything that I felt was really right for Tess and Annie for something as important as their aunt's wedding, and knowing their mother in the show and how fashionable she is and how stylish she is. I quickly realized that I was going to also build those. And so what I used a slightly more youthful version of the French lace that I used on Kate's wedding dress for their bodices, and just a Dupioni silk and petticoats, and it was just lovely. I mean, when my daughter was young and we had special events, I never really could find the dresses that I wanted for her either, and so I made their dresses sort of a more deluxe version of what I used to make for my daughter. She was growing up, so she was sort of my muse for them. But I'm really happy with how that all turned out.
Is it easier when you get like the Halloween episodes or like the Vegas episodes where you can be a little bit more out there, when you don't have to be confined, being like I have to like be kind of like era accurate with like this month in 1991 or something?
That is so much fun for us because, I mean, well, that is the fun of the show for us and for my entire, I think I speak for my entire crew, is that we really do like jumping around in time and we do like exploring all the different eras and all the different silhouettes and telling all these different parts of people's lives, telling those stories. But yes, it's really super fun to be able to get outside of reality and have Jack and Rebecca dressed as Sunny and Cher and make that gown for her and just really get to do something that's really kooky and not necessarily in keeping with their character.
I love Kate's cocktail dress in Vegas for the Bachelorette. That was so. Green is my favorite color.
I love that.
So sparkly and fun. So, what was that custom?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I make almost most of Kate's anything that's special or fancy that you see on Kate is custom made. We do a lot of altering of basic stuff. We basically alter almost everything that you see on everyone on the show has gone through our tailor shop and has been altered. Whether even if it's the men's suits, everything goes through the tailor shop because I think for me I started actually as a stitcher, and so the fit is always really super important to me. But with Kate. Her personality and her character is super stylish and super fun and playful, and sometimes I can't find those things in the stores, and so I find myself making. It isn't only just the fashion, the fancier stuff that I make for her. I make just basic dusters and jackets and things for her that are just really that show some of her personality that we can't find in stores.
Well, your big episode last year was the Super Bowl episode where we find out how Jack died. There's not a lot of fashion there. I mean, we have, I guess, Rebecca's Steelers shirt, but it's very simple. Like, what kind of notes or thoughts did you have going into styling that episode, knowing it was such a big episode? But it's they just wake up in the middle of the night, so they're in pajamas, so it's not really extravagant like some other episodes.
It's so interesting to hear you say that because for all the people who work behind the scenes know that was one of the hardest ones for us behind the scenes because we needed so many multiples. We had stuntmen, we had different degrees.
We had fire.
We had fire, real fire. And so, and we wanted, because it was so important what was happening, we put as much thought into that as we did the wedding episode or any of the other episodes. It was just so important. There was so much of a build-up to it also, and in terms of the audience and the fans and everybody wanting to know what's going to happen. The Steelers jersey is an actual, that we have 5 of them, I think about every single one that exists in the world. It's vintage. Of course, we went through the legal department and had all that cleared. It's a licensed vintage Steelers jersey that Rebecca wore. They do wake up in the middle of the night, but what they do is when Jack realizes that the house is on fire, everyone quickly picks up the clothes that they were wearing the day before. So in the episode before that, you see that they're wearing the clothes when the house burns down. The kids are wearing their pajamas, but the parents are putting on the clothes that they were wearing the day before because those were the clothes that were nearby to get dressed quickly. But that was really complicated. And the actors did. Jack, of course, Milo Ventimiglia does. I think he did most of his own stunts, and it was incredible. I mean, there are scenes when you see him dropping the family down, wrapped with a sheet under their arms, with the house on fire. He did that all himself. He actually, and over, for every take that we had to do it, every single family member, he did it himself, and it was really something to watch. I mean, Milo is a lot like Jack. He's really, in case you don't already know this, but he's kind of my hero right now. So yeah.
Well, season 3, what can you tease? Because you said that you just started today. Right?
I started yesterday.
You started yesterday. Okay. So what can you tell us about?
I can't tell you.
Do you go further back in time?
I can't tell you anything for 2 reasons. The first and most important reason is that I'm not allowed to tell you anything. So even if I did know, I can't tell you. Sorry about that. But I don't actually have a script yet either. I know some of the broad strokes. I know some of the stuff we're going to explore this season. I know some of the stuff we're going to explore in this first episode. But we just are in such an early phase of it, so I don't even.
Are we going to see Jack in Vietnam?
You can. Dan Fogelman has been was. We had an FYC event the other night, and Dan Fogelman was joking that he was sitting in a sushi restaurant with his wife, and he was laying out the whole season to her, where there were these 2 ladies sitting, 2 feet away from him, listening to the whole thing. So somebody probably has already released everything that's going to be happening this season. I should probably look it up online so I know what I'm going to be doing. But the writers, of course, and Dan have a plan. They have the whole trajectory for the whole, for many years going forward. But I just don't know what that is yet specifically. But as I'm certain that, as always, we're going to be jumping around in time. We're going to be, I'm sure we're going to be covering at least 4 decades.
And the future now.
And the future, because we saw a little bit. I think a lot of what people think of, there are some answers in the very end of that last episode. I think, and I know that what Dan said publicly, Dan said we're going to be exploring more about Beth and Toby, the characters, the wife of Randall and now the husband of Kate. Dan publicly said that we are going to be exploring their backstories a little bit. And so I'm excited about that because I want to see how I can help tell their stories with the costumes as we see them kind of lead up to where they are now.